What's up guys, so in this video I'm going to be going over the settings that you can use to customize your own crosshair, and at the end I'll be talking about my own personal crosshair that I like to use as well. Alright, so I'm just going to quickly go over what all the settings do for your crosshairs, and then I'll go over the crosshair that I like to use. So at the top is just a little preview bar for the crosshair so you can see how you're editing it without having to go back into game. So the first setting is just the crosshair colors, and you can change the color of the crosshair to however you see fit. The next one is the outlines, and you could turn on and off the outlines to create a little bit more separation between the crosshair and the background. The outline opacity is how much you can see through the outlines themselves. You can make it a little bit less see-through or more see-through using this bar. The outline thickness is how thick you want the outlines to be, so you can make some really wonky looking crosshairs if you raise it up. The center dot just adds a little dot at the center of the crosshair. Some people like this, some people don't. It's just all personal preference. This is the same with you can make the dot at the center a little bit see-through, or you can make it thick or even very small if you see fit. The fade crosshair with firing error is when you spray, the top of the crosshair disappears once the spray gets a little bit random. And then showing spectated players crosshair makes it so that when you're looking at someone else's crosshair, you can see what they're using, or you can turn that off or on, but usually I like to have it on just to see what everyone else is using. So inner and outer lines are pretty much the same, they're just two separate lines. So I'm gonna just be going over the first one, and it's exactly the same for the second one. So inner line opacity is the same as the opacity for the outlines. It just makes it more see-through. The length of the lines is the second setting, and you can just make it super long or super short. You can adjust the thickness of these lines as well as the offset and how far away from each other they can go. And now for movement error, so let's just leave movement error off for now. So as you can see, the outer lines have movement error on and the inner lines have movement error off, and so it just shows how much error you have when moving around the game in Valorant. And so as you can see, when you're running you have a lot of error, and when you're walking there's a little bit less. When you're standing still it's perfectly still. Firing error is, if you take a look at the inner lines, how they shake, it shows how much air there is once you start spraying. Alright, so personally I like to use I've been experimenting with white, green, and pink just because I feel like they separate from the back of the screen and the surroundings a lot. I don't really see much green, so I like to use green. I've been experimenting with white, green, and pink, and I used outlines off for a very long time, but I felt like I needed a little bit more separation from the background just to be able to see my crosshair a little better. And I've been using it around like 0.075 or 0.75, excuse me. And then thickness, I just leave it at 1. Anything more than that is like too thick for me, and it starts looking kind of weird. I personally don't like having the center dot on because I feel like when it's on, it kind of blocks the vision of people's heads. So I might experiment with maybe like a center thickness of 1, but I usually just have that off. And then fade crosshair with firing error, I have it on. I barely even notice this. And so for this part I just use the outer line, so I just have these all off. And so for the opacity I just have it at 1, and then the length I like 7, and then the thickness I like it pretty thin, so I have it at 1, and then the offset I like having it at 3. So it's a pretty basic crosshair. I like having the movement error and fire error off just so that it doesn't move and distract me when I'm playing the game. I feel like with this crosshair, since it doesn't move, it's a little bit easier for me to keep track of my crosshair. When it's like moving and like kind of crazy, it's like too much of a distraction. So I personally like having a static crosshair. I feel like a lot of other people use this type of crosshair as well. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. So all I suggest is you go into this and test it out and try to use something that you are comfortable with. Usually I think at the beginning it might be nice to just use the default crosshair, because it might be hard for a new player to understand when you can make that perfect accurate shot. And so having movement error and firing error on, I feel like helps with that. But once you get more comfortable with the game, I suggest having a static crosshair, because the movement tends to, I feel like it distracts me from actually aiming, and so I would suggest just having that off. Yeah, hopefully this helps a little bit. I know people are always talking about crosshairs, and people have asked me what are my crosshair settings, and so hopefully this helps you guys a little bit when choosing your own crosshair. That's it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any questions, feel free to follow my stream. I stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 12 p.m. PST. Also, shout out to everyone who's been liking and subscribing to my channel. Every little thing helps. And with that, good luck in your games and happy fragging.